Thanks for staying with us. Time now for African News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Western donors start freezing aid to Uganda as activists warn of a worsening witch hunt of homosexuals. The tabloid has outed hundreds of alleged gay people after a homophobic law was passed on Monday. Also, France has voted in favour of extending its military mission in Central African Republic. Operation Sangaris was launched 4 months ago, but as the crisis drags on, France's Prime Minister warns that there is still work to be done. And we take a look at the creations of a designer from the COMOROS. Sakina Msa's latest collection's been a hit on Paris's catwalks. First up, Ugandan gay rights activists have warned that a newspaper's decision to out 200 alleged homosexuals risks putting lives in very real danger. The Red Pepper tabloid's front page story comes a day after President Yoweri Museveni signed into law a harsh anti-gay bill that holds that repeat homosexuals should be jailed for life. The US has said it could cut aid to the East African nation over the move. The Netherlands has already frozen a €7 million subsidy to Uganda's legal system, and Denmark and Norway say they'll be redirecting millions in funding. But the law is popular amongst Ugandans' conservative communities.
The president signed the anti-homosexuality bill was extremely good because all Ugandans decided not to adopt that homosexuality bill. It was actually extremely very bad for Ugandans adopt that. So all Ugandans are very happy about that.
I personally can't say I'm in for the gays or I'm not in for the gays, but the teaching of the Catholic Church says that is unnatural, and it is not allowed in the Catholic Church.
Well, in 2011, prominent gay activist David Kato was killed after his name appeared in a list of alleged homosexuals published by the now defunct Rolling Stone tabloid. Well, Ugandan activist Yunka Wambia believes Red Pepper's articles today could also be fatally inflammatory.
The Red Pepper publishing the names of people in the newspaper is like they're just sending a message. It's like an inciting violence against the people they are mentioning their names. When the Rolling Stone published the names of the so-called top homosexuals and then it said hang them, there was a lot of violence and it ended up in the death of someone. Of course, with the Red Pepper doing this, it's just like they are following the footsteps of what the Rolling Stone did. Of course, within the community, people have already received their verbal harassment, warnings and threats, and we are seeing an increased number of people saying they would rather commit suicide and die but not go to the jails. So this has caused a lot of psychological torture to LGBTI persons in Uganda.
Yunka Wambia there speaking to us a little earlier from Uganda. France has voted in favour of extending its military mission in Central African Republic. Operation Sangaris was launched 4 months ago, and on Tuesday, Prime Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault told lawmakers that the job was far from finished. Interreligious tit-for-tat killings have continued despite the presence of 2,000 French, around 6,000 African Union peacekeepers. The country was plunged into crisis last year after a rebel takeover. An interim government's now in place, but alongside the violence are also fears of a food crisis. Supplies have started to trickle back into the country, but food's still hard to come by. Our Chris Moore sent us this report from Bangui.
Fresh from Cameroon, a convoy of over 100 lorries rolls into Bangui carrying much-needed supplies. The 600-kilometre drive from the border is far from safe.
It went fine, apart from the odd ambush.
The drivers are thanked by the head of the African forces who escorted them.
Bonjour! Voilà.
Despite the efforts of the international mission here, armed groups are still trying to set up roadblocks, and much work needs to be done before this crucial supply line to the capital can be fully reopened.
We need to establish lasting security along the whole route so that traffic can pass safely day and night, and that's still a long way off.
Tons of goods are unloaded. Dried fish, salt and soap the prices of which have been skyrocketing.
Now, this long-awaited convoy contains vital supplies for many here in Bangui, for the French and African military operations, for increasingly poorly stocked shops and markets, and for the tens of thousands of residents still living in refugee camps.
As many as 50,000 of the city's 280,000 displaced live in the Don Bosco camp. They went more than a month without aid arriving.
We went from December 6th with nothing to eat. We are suffering. There's not even any soap to wash with.
The United Nations is now bringing in basic foods, but the odd airlift aside, they're as dependent as the rest of the city on lorries from Cameroon.
2 weeks ago, we had hardly any food left to distribute. We were almost out of stock. The most important thing is that the road is safe enough for the regular transit of lorries. It's crucial to get supplies to the affected areas before the rainy season, because then the roads will be impassable.
African forces are working to increase the number of convoys from 1 a week to 3. Until that happens, shortages remain a fact of life in Bangui.
Well, having secured pledges of almost €8 billion, Senegal's president has surpassed his fundraising hopes here in Paris. Macky Sall's been in the French capital attending an international donors conference as he tries to drum up financing for an array of projects that are part of a development plan that, if it goes according to plan, would double economic growth in Senegal and win the country emerging nation status by 2020. Well, the European Union has already budgeted around €350 million for the project and begun working closely with Senegalese authorities in making the dreams a reality. France 24's Maeve McMahon tells us more.
A demographic boom and spontaneous construction have transformed this neighbourhood in just a few years. Located in the west of Dakar, Han hosts over 38,000 inhabitants. Most live in precarious, unhygienic conditions. Authorities have given themselves 3 years to regenerate the area.
Some of this house will be destroyed. We will knock it down. We'll want to make the street 8 meters wide. As you can see now, it's not even 4 meters wide.
Wider streets, improved pavements, a rehabilitated electricity network and a water purification system. With the help of EU funds and advice from the locals, these will be the tasks of the Urban Development Foundation, FDV.
The project aims to address the problem of domestic sewage, industrial wastewater and solid waste issues. The idea is to gradually restore the quality of the water at the Bay of Han, which is extremely degraded today.
In total, the EU will unlock some €350 million for the country between now and 2020. This was announced by the bloc's Development Commissioner during a recent visit to Dakar. He hopes the plan, Senegal Emerging, will be able to complement this aid.
This plan provides direction and shows us where to invest donations. But we must use other instruments and more money to support investment in infrastructure, especially in the energy sector.
The goal? To make Senegal an emerging country by 2035 by boosting the growth rate from 4 to 8%.
Supporters of a Frenchman who was freed last night after having spent 17 years in a Cameroonian prison gathered today in celebration outside of France's embassy in Yaoundé, where he's supposed to be staying. Michel ATANGANA was found guilty in 1997 for embezzlement alongside former Health Minister Titus Edzoa. Both have always maintained their innocence and say they were victims of a political vendetta by President Paul Biya. Before their imprisonment, ATANGANA had been due to be Edzoa's campaign manager after he announced his candidacy in the 1997 election. Look now at the creations of a designer from the Comoros. Sakina Msa's latest collection hit the catwalks in Paris and met with widespread acclaim. She says she looks to her homeland in the Indian Ocean for inspiration.
Splendid simplicity sets the tone for Sakina Msa's latest collection in Paris.
I like the idea of being different, of cultivating different things. I know what I'm talking about. I'm from the Comorian Islands, where everybody is from a mixed background, and I think that life should be about remixing.
A mix of recycled designer and thrift shop clothes and fabric translates Sakina's commitment to sustainable development on a social, economic and environmental level.
It was magnificent. It's better and better each time. Attention to detail, color, patterns. I'm really proud. Sublime to look at, with a real soul, a political message and state of mind. It's great to see this combination in a fashion show.
Her collections, which are made by women in back-to-work programs, are distributed all over Europe and in Asia.
Africa is modern. It's a bubble of inventiveness, of creativity, of intelligence. In 15 years' time, it will have the clout China has today.
Multinationals are joining forces with Sakina to develop her brand and a network of ethical, sustainable fashion trademarks.
And that wraps up African news from me. I will be back, though, with more tomorrow. Stay with us, short break, and more news and headlines coming up. Take care.